Elimination Chamber is later tonight, and WWE is planning some big surprises. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to kick things off with some WWE plans for 2025, more specifically the WWE Draft. This is obviously very interesting because WWE just did like the transfer portal thing. Obviously, a lot of people were wondering what will WWE do with the draft. Now, PWInsider.com has actually done a Q&A session. Mike Johnson was asked about this, and he made a very clear response. He said that we are told that a draft is still planned for the post-WrestleMania season. That means once the dust settles, obviously SmackDown and Raw will have another reshuffled roster. Now, this is interesting because WWE just did the transfer portal, and I can't imagine them doing the transfer portal and some of these people that have been moved, potentially being moved back to Raw or moved back to SmackDown. But obviously, this is a very big deal. This is a very big thing that people are obviously interested in. But I do got to say, I love the draft. I love the draft taking place. I love the concept of the draft. I feel like last year WWE did a little bit better with the draft. However, I do have to be very honest in the sense that I think the draft has to have a little bit of a different presentation. We have two general managers. I think you know you gotta spice it up, man. I watched the NBA draft. I watched the NFL draft. I've talked about this for so many years. I want them to basically replicate what we see in professional American sports. And dude, for some reason, WWE gets better and better at it, but they just haven't perfected it. And that's one of the reasons why I genuinely just believe they need to change it up a little bit. So if you're going to do the draft in 2025, if you're going to do it after WrestleMania, if you're going to call up NXT talent, I want to see them actually do things that are meaningful. And really, my only criticism that I've ever had of the draft is don't draft people without a plan. Blair Davenport and Dijak are the two big examples that I have because we have seen them get drafted and then WWE did absolutely nothing with them and then eventually they get released. And that is something to me that I just genuinely don't think is cool. So if you're going to draft people from NXT, if you're going to go through with this draft and you're going to have people switching brands, don't just do it because you're doing draft night. Do it because you genuinely have plans for who is being put on these rosters. And, especially when you look at SmackDown and the mid card there, they have a great roster, but maybe the booking isn't as great. This is an opportunity to use the draft and freshen things up. And honestly, if you have somebody debuting, please put them as part of the draft. Shock the world. Do something a little bit different. That brings us to our next topic. WWE SmackDown suffered from some last minute changes. And really, this is interesting to me for a variety of reasons because this was relatively a prominent thing under the Vince McMahon era. We don't really see this too often with WWE, under Triple H. PWInsider.com has reported that SmackDown made some last minute changes. WWE originally had LA Knight versus Shinsuke Nakamura for the U.S. title. Instead, what WWE did was they actually did three different matches. We saw it on SmackDown: LA Knight versus Santos Escobar, Jacob Fatu versus Andrade, and then Carmelo Hayes versus Braun Strowman. That basically led to a triple threat match with the winner going up against Shinsuke Nakamura. We saw LA Knight win, but for some reason WWE made that last minute change where essentially, hey, instead of doing the U.S. Championship match, we're going to do a tournament instead. And basically, we still got the same result, which is LA Knight. Now, I do want to say, last minute changes, I've always been adamant about this. I've always said this. It doesn't really matter, WWE or AEW. They're going to happen. It's natural, right? What's really interesting, though, is there was some rumors that Triple H was more hands-on with SmackDown yesterday, and it turned out to be a really good episode of SmackDown. Lately, as of late, SmackDown has kind of suffered a little bit, and I think because SmackDown has suffered a little bit, it's led to this whole issue where, yeah, maybe the last-minute changes are necessary. And that's just not, listen, for me personally, as a fan of WWE, as a fan of professional wrestling, I just want good quality TV. You can make all the last minute changes in the world. Vince McMahon made last minute changes and it was just garbage show. Last night's show was really, really good. So I don't really offer criticism here. I do think it is interesting that they made the change. However, what I will say is this. Last night's go home show was great. It was one of the better SmackDowns of the year. What I personally want to see, and this is my thing that I'm just going to keep touting, personally speaking, I don't like the time slot on Fridays for 3 hours. I don't. So I'm going to remain adamant about this for a very, very long time. Until it gets back to 2 hours or until SmackDown moves nights, I am not going to be supportive of a 3-hour SmackDown on a Friday night. I have talked about this a lot on this channel, on my live streams. It's just something I'm very adamant about. It's just a personal thing, which is completely fine, obviously. That's just my own personal viewing experience. I thought SmackDown was really, really good last night, but I do find SmackDown being 3 hours long challenging. It's a lot different than Raw. So they do got to get to that point. Maybe the draft will help with the reshuffling or whatever it may be, but obviously 3-hour SmackDown isn't a long-term plan. I wouldn't even mind SmackDown being 3 hours, just not on Friday nights. And that brings us to our final topic. Obviously, with Elimination Chamber, WWE is planning some major surprises. It's being said that WWE has a lot of big plans for Elimination Chamber. Yesterday, we talked about it. Triple H talking about an industry-changing event. Now, obviously, listen, I laugh even at the thought of this. But if WWE could do something big to make Elimination Chamber really pop off, that's going to be huge. Jade Cargill is reportedly in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo is a short drive to Toronto. We know that WWE is obviously not going to outright just fly her to Toronto. Obviously, they try to protect these things. Something I've been told is that WWE has more plans than just what Jade Cargill could be doing. So to me, that's exciting. Elimination Chamber, last night's SmackDown did a really good job of building up Elimination Chamber. So what we need to do is deliver a great Elimination Chamber PLE. The Rock and Cody is now a very big deal. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn has a lot of momentum. Both chamber matches have a lot of momentum. There is some more excitement after SmackDown last night. This was a good week for WWE building Elimination Chamber. So with WWE planning some surprises and some industry-changing moments, I think Elimination Chamber could be the thing that gets WWE back on track for WrestleMania. I've said this before. WWE is good programming. However, maybe it's fatigue. Maybe it's a lack of really, really, really big storylines. I don't know. But the road to WrestleMania is obviously really weird this year. So, got to get it on track. Got to get that build going. There's no reason why WrestleMania 41 can't be successful. It obviously will be. But you got to do something. And it looks like WWE knows this, and they got some stuff in their plans at Elimination Chamber to get people excited. So we'll see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ango. Thank you for watching The Ango Show.